Picture this, 300,000 years ago. A small band of humans, maybe 20, maybe 30 people, huddles around a fire in what is now Morocco. The night is freezing. The stars are impossibly bright, undimmed by any city light on Earth, and within this tiny group, there is no other village to walk to, no app to swipe on, no stranger to marry, just them, just family. Here's the question that makes historians, geneticists, and honestly, most of us squirm a little. If you were born into that group, who exactly could you have children with? Before you scroll away uncomfortable, stay with me, because the answer is stranger, more scientific, and more human than you think. And if stories like this, the ones history books skip over, pull you in, hit subscribe now, because this channel exists to dig up exactly these buried truths. Let's set the scene properly. Early Homo sapiens didn't live in sprawling societies. They lived in small, isolated bands, often fewer than 50 people, sometimes as few as 15. Geneticists studying ancient DNA have found something remarkable. For most of human history, our ancestors existed in tiny, scattered pockets, separated by vast, dangerous, unmapped wilderness. There was no Tinder. There was no neighboring town 3 miles down the highway. There was only the group you were born into. And maybe, a chance encounter with another band once every few years, if you were lucky and they weren't hostile. So the uncomfortable truth is this. In many early human populations, close relative reproduction wasn't a taboo exception. It was, at times, a demographic reality. Cousins, and in some documented ancient cases, even closer relatives had children together, not because anyone wanted a horror story, because the world was that small. Now here's where it gets genuinely fascinating. In 2021, archaeologists studying a 54,000-year-old Neanderthal community in Sunghir Cave, Siberia, sequenced the DNA of 13 individuals in the largest Neanderthal family study ever done. What they found stunned the scientific world. This community showed signs of chronic inbreeding, generation after generation, because their population was simply too small and too isolated to avoid it. A father-daughter pair, close cousins. It wasn't scandal. It was survival math in a world with almost no alternative. Try to imagine living that reality. You're a teenager in that cave 54,000 years ago. Your entire dating pool is your own family unit. There's no shame narrative running through your head, because the concept of an alternative barely exists. Your ancestors didn't have our modern frameworks of morality built around genetics. They couldn't see. They had instinct, scarcity, and survival. And that's the raw, uncomfortable brilliance of this topic. It forces us to separate two things we usually blend together. What is biologically risky and what is culturally taboo? Those two ideas developed on completely different timelines. And understanding why they diverged tells us something profound about how human society itself was built. Because here's the twist coming up. Humans didn't just stumble into incest avoidance by accident. Something changed, biologically, socially, psychologically, that pushed our ancestors to actively start seeking outsiders. And the evidence for when and why this shift happened is written directly into your own DNA right now, in this moment as you're watching this. So before we go further, comment below one word. Survival or shocking. Tell me which side of this story hit you harder so far. It helps me know what deep dive to bring you next. Let's get into the hard science, because this is where the story stops, being speculation and becomes something you can actually see, written in bone and blood. In 2019, a team of researchers, led by paleogeneticist Marta Mirazon, Lar and colleagues found something eerie in the remains of an upper Paleolithic child buried in Sunghir, Russia, a site roughly 34,000 years old. The burial itself was stunning. Bodies covered in thousands of ivory beads, an extraordinary display of ritual and care. But when scientists sequenced the DNA of the individuals buried there, they expected to find a tight-knit family, possibly inbred. Given how small and isolated the group must have been, instead they found the opposite. These individuals were not closely related. Not siblings, not first cousins. In a population that should have been forced into close relative pairings, the Sunghir people were reproducing with genetically distant partners. This discovery rewired how scientists understood early human society. It suggested that even 34,000 years ago, humans had already developed systems, social rules, kinship networks, maybe even early marriage customs, specifically designed to send young people outward to find partners in other bands. Anthropologists call this exogamy, marrying outside your immediate group. And Sunghir is some of the oldest hard evidence we have that humans were deliberately engineering their own gene pool long before anyone understood what a gene even was. Now here's the mind-bending part. Compare Sunghir to that Neanderthal cave in Siberia we talked about earlier, the one riddled with inbreeding. Same era, roughly. Two different species. Two completely different survival strategies. Some scientists now argue this is actually one of the reasons Homo sapiens outlasted Neanderthals. We built wider social networks. We traded people, stories, tools, and genes across bands. Neanderthals, in many documented cases, didn't, and their populations paid a steep genetic price for it, accumulating harmful mutations generation after generation until their populations became fragile. Let's pause here for a second, because I want you to actually think about this. Why does incest avoidance even exist in humans biologically? It's not just culture. Researchers have found it's partly hardwired. This is called the Westermarck Effect, named after Finnish anthropologist Edvard Westermarck, who theorized in 1891 that people who grow up in close proximity during early childhood, regardless of blood relation, and develop an automatic, subconscious sexual aversion to one another later in life. It's been confirmed repeatedly in modern studies, including famous research on Israeli kibbutzim, where unrelated children raised together almost never married each other as adults, even though nothing stopped them. Comment below, do you think this aversion is something your brain does automatically? Or do you think it's something society teaches us? I genuinely want to know your take, because researchers themselves are still split on how much is nature versus nurture here. What's wild is this. Mechanism evolved precisely because the genetic risks were real. Inbreeding depression, the accumulation of harmful recessive mutations, was a slow, silent threat that early humans couldn't see, but evolution solved it anyway through psychology, not conscious choice. Your discomfort at the idea of this topic? That's not squeamishness. That's roughly 300,000 years of evolutionary programming firing in real time. And this is exactly why the story doesn't end in the ancient past. It continues into royal bloodlines, isolated modern communities, and even into your own DNA results if you've ever taken a 23andMe test. Let's fast forward past the caves, past Sunghir, past Siberia, into a story you might actually recognize. The Habsburgs. For nearly 200 years, one of the most powerful royal families in European history practiced something eerily similar to what we saw in that Neanderthal cave, except this time, it wasn't forced by scarcity of population. It was forced by politics. To keep power concentrated, the Habsburgs married uncle to niece, first cousin to first cousin, generation after generation. And the result was devastating. The final Habsburg king of Spain, Charles II, was so genetically compromised that historians describe him as barely able to chew his own food, infertile and disabled by a cascade of health issues. In 2009, a genetic study analyzing his family tree calculated his inbreeding coefficient as higher than that of a child born to siblings, an empire undone not by war, but by its own bloodline. Here's the connection that should genuinely give you chills. The exact same biological rule that protected a hunter-gatherer band. 50,000 years ago from genetic collapse, spreading genes wide, avoiding close relative pairing, is the same rule. The most powerful family in Europe ignored for the sake of a crown. Nature doesn't care about status. The math is the math. And this isn't just ancient royal drama. Modern genetics has confirmed the risks with startling precision. Studies published in journals, like the Journal of Genetic Counseling, show that children of first cousin pairings face roughly a 4 to 6% increased risk of recessive genetic disorders compared to the general population's baseline of about 3%. It's not catastrophic in every case, but it's measurable, real, and it's the exact same silent pressure that shaped human mating behavior for hundreds of thousands of years. So what's the actual takeaway here? It's this. Almost everything about modern dating, the instinct to look outside your friend group, your hometown, your comfort zone, even swiping on a stranger from across the country, is a direct descendant of a survival strategy your ancestors developed to keep the species alive. That mild flutter of attraction you feel towards someone new, someone unfamiliar? Evolutionary biologists argue that novelty itself may be partly wired into human attraction because unfamiliar. Genetics historically meant healthier offspring. Your dating app isn't just modern convenience. It's Sunghir's exogamy strategy, running on a smartphone. And here's the deepest twist of all. Geneticists now believe that virtually every human alive today carries the genetic echoes of these ancient bottlenecks. Every one of us descends from small, fragile founding populations that had to solve this exact problem to survive. In a very real sense, you are alive right now because thousands of generations ago, someone made the choice consciously or instinctively, to look for a partner outside the firelight of their own family. So the next time you feel that instinctive pull towards someone unfamiliar, someone from a different background, a different town, a different world than yours, know that you're not just following a modern romantic impulse. You're echoing a 300,000-year-old survival strategy written into the deepest parts of your biology. If this story changed the way you see human history, and honestly, your own DNA, hit subscribe, because we're just getting started. Next time, we're diving into an even darker chapter. The ancient civilizations that did practice sibling marriage on purpose, as sacred royal law, and the shocking reason some cultures believed it made. Their bloodline divine, not dangerous. You do not want to miss that one. Turn on notifications, and I'll see you in the next video.